Well. It's Friday, everybody. Hi, it's Can I Talk with Roz? Roz McCarthy here, along with my best co-host, my best friend in all the world, Eric Range. What's going on, my brother?
What's going on, my sister? Back for another Friday, Fire Fridays as we call them. And you know what? I'm excited about today because we've been talking about it a little bit over the last few days and so on. But you're out in LA right now. The whole team is out in LA right now. And, people see us all over the place. They hear us talking. But sometimes, they need to see the work up close and personal. So I'm excited about what's going on this weekend. Wish I could be out there with y'all. But, we're going to talk a little bit about it today. So I'm excited.
So listen, guys, as we get people to start coming into the room and kind of joining the broadcast, we're so excited to have you guys. And we're going to start and we're just going to get right into it. Social justice in cannabis is such a critical issue that we cannot forget about. The fact that we still have Black and brown people incarcerated for this plant, also having people that still have, have charges on their records that's challenging them from having a just normal, basic life in regards to having the opportunity for housing, for employment, for credit, you name it. So today we're talking about the promise of expungement clinics and expunging people's records and why the laws in some states are different and what it means. And we at M4MM, we have a dedicated program called Project Clean Slate. So we have our program director, also our manager, as well as our associate counsel. And we have a special guest with us today I'm just floored because she's so awesome, so special. And she has a new announcement, her new position, and her company is sponsoring our expungement clinic. So, hey, let's get it started. So let's go. Our first guest that we're going to bring up to the stage is our director for Project Clean Slate, Danielle Butler. Hey, Danielle.
Hey, good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody in Radio Land.
What's going on?
To see you guys.
Good to see you.
So happy to see you. And our next person we're bringing in is Jade Mathis, our associate counsel for Project Clean Slate. Hey, Jade.
Hello. Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And then next we have Sonia Crew. We're bringing in. Sonia is a dedicated licensed clinical social worker who is our community and outreach manager. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, everybody, and good morning, afternoon, whatever your flavor is. Hey, it's Friday, and I'm excited.
We're excited to see you. And last but not least, my love, my friend, the better half to my co-host, the other half to the co-host, but this lovely lady who is now in her new role as Director of Community Engagement with the Cookies brand, Miss Tamika Range.
Hi, hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Good morning. I'm in the West Coast.
Your husband's face is lighted up. His face on. Hey. So you guys don't know.
So blessed to be here with you too, with everybody this morning.
And my face lit up because I didn't get to wake up to that beautiful face this morning. So get to see her for the first time today here on Can I Talk with Roz. So yeah.
Hey, how about it? And if you didn't know, my awesome co-host Eric Range, his wife Tamika Range is his wife, and so that's why you see that beautiful bright smile and blushing face on Eric this morning as he sees his wife. So, but we're gonna get into it. We'll let y'all honeymoon later. We're gonna talk about this subject today. An essential conversation. Danielle, can you just give us let's set a foundation. What is Project Clean Slate, and what exactly is the purpose of the program?
Absolutely. So Project Clean Slate is the social justice division of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. I'm super excited because we have the opportunity not only to enter communities that have expungement laws on the books already, but we have the ability to impact change in those areas. Conversations like we're having today make it possible for us to really push for legislation that makes sense for our Black and brown communities of color. And so what we do is we educate communities on what the expungement process is, what does it look like, what does it mean, in their local state. And then we provide expungement related services. So connecting individuals with licensed attorneys in their states to review their cases and to talk them through the process. And then the final step is our wraparound services, where we're able to support them with getting access to information and resources that they need to continue their journey beyond the expungement, because life is different once your criminal record has been changed or removed.
Absolutely. And so with that, laying the foundation of our conversation, I had a chance to connect with Jade back in September 2020. And this is when I knew that I had to create a team to work on this Project Clean Slate and bring this program together. And the program not only has Danielle as a director, and we do expungement services, but there's also wraparound services that we provide, and that's with Sonia Cruel being the manager that runs and facilitates that. But when I met Jade, and this is in Maryland, and she shared with me, just her vision, share her experience in doing expungement clinics. Jade, can you talk about the importance of just what you've done on expungement clinics prior to M4MM and why they're important and how it's different based upon what state you're in regards to how easy it is or maybe how hard it is to get people's records expunged?
Absolutely. So one thing that I think we have historically known, especially as minorities, are that there are a lot of laws and statutes in different states that are disproportionate to one population over another, right? A lot of them are going to be your drug crimes, your handgun crimes. Those are crimes I call crimes of necessity, crimes to survive. However, those punishments for the people who are committing these crimes to live, to survive as a mode of survival and a means of survival, are getting these disproportionate sentences and are getting these records. And now a lot of states have decriminalized or, made cannabis or marijuana illegal altogether. However, that doesn't, the ramifications of your record is still there. So expungement is essentially a wiping clean of your record. So what happens in the criminal justice system is that when you're arrested and you're charged, a record is started there, right? So if it goes forth and you're prosecuted, then you have that conviction on your record. If it's dropped, you still have something if someone puts your name into a system, it still pops up. Whether this is an employer, whether this is the federal government because you're seeking a loan for school, whether this is an apartment building that you're seeking to live at, something is showing up for your name. Now, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, I would say particularly southern states, the laws are going to be more conservative, right? The laws, if you are in New York or if you're in Maryland, DC, the laws are more liberal. And that is a result of you having, who you're voting in office. Who does your state's attorney look like? Who do your politicians look like? Because those are the people who are making the expungement laws. So if you have a more liberal, attorney or liberal politicians, then your laws are going to look like that, and that's going to affect the individual. So depending on what state you look like, you may be able to get an expungement immediately for certain charges. For other charges, you may not be able to get an expungement ever for that. So that's something that we're doing, and I've been doing expungements for about 6 years, initially as a prosecutor, and that's just something that I think is important that we start looking at as minorities, is because those are affecting us, and there's a way to get a lot of these charges off of your records. So that's why the work that we're doing is so important.
Absolutely. And before I go to Tamika, because I want her to weigh in on this, talk about the relationship with the state attorney's office, because you talked about voting for the right people in place. But we did an expungement clinic in Maryland back in September of 2020, and to have the state attorney's office, their office out supporting, having the local politicians out supporting, it just made even the process of getting people's records cleared. I mean, can you just talk about that a little bit for me?
Yeah, so what some states, and that's what my boss, state's attorney Aisha Brayboy in Maryland, she's what you call a progressive prosecutor. You have some other states, Illinois progressive prosecutors, their laws are going to be more progressive. So they are going to be, more willing to have expungement fairs and help individuals clean up their records. Whereas if you may have some that are more conservative and you are not going to have those options. And that's why I said it's important to look at your leaders that you have in. But yes, for progressive prosecutors, they're doing the criminal justice reform, right? So the reform part is to help make amends for society, the wrongs that were done in society, we still want to give you second chances to be rehabilitated. So that's what's important with a lot of progressive prosecutors and progressive politicians.
Absolutely. So progressive is the name of the game. Tamika, would you share a little bit about your background? You and an attorney prior to your new position and new opportunities with the Cookies brand, but from someone in the cannabis industry as an attorney and in all of your legal work that you've done, just talk about, the work and how the importance that the cannabis industry cannot forsake the social justice part when it comes to like expungements, stealing of records, releasing people from prison.
It's very critical. I started in this industry in 2015 with Art 420 and then started my law firm. And through that, through my firm, I've had the opportunity to help people both on the business side, but in and outside of cannabis, but help them on the business side of getting into cannabis and then also providing services on the criminal side. And while I did that, I also served as an adjunct professor at FAMU College of Law, and I taught cannabis law and social justice to the law students. And I can tell you both from the educational standpoint on the collegiate level and also from the standpoint of providing services to my clients on the criminal side, there was a complete I don't want to say misunderstanding, but a lack of intent of understanding the change of cannabis laws. So if the prosecutor or the judge is ignorant and or just uneducated in a change of statute, that makes a big difference in how they hand down sentences and or reduce sentences. And I saw it firsthand with a client in which the judge just did not understand that the law was so new, the judge did not understand it, so therefore he did not implement it, and that is a consequence. Who's suffering the consequences? My client, who is actually going to be on probation for more time, but there are other people that are going to remain in jail for longer, and there's still going to be people that get arrested for crimes or for things that are not crimes anymore. Right. And then on the education side, it was an eye opener for people that thought that the system was equal, right? So opening their eyes and pulling the wool over their eyes on the criminal justice system, the prison system, the vast majority of pointing out what population of people are actually arrested for simple marijuana possession crimes. A lot of people still don't know those numbers, or they still don't believe that is actually still going on. So educating both professionals, providing services and education for people that need the services, the expungement services, and then also providing services on the back end is extremely important. And I'm just really happy that at this point of my career that I was able to step into a position as a director for community relations with a company like Cookies, who is just the fastest growing cannabis company and is a heavy advocate for community outreach and education. So I'm super happy about us working with Minorities for Medical Marijuana on this expungement clinic tomorrow.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Sonia, go ahead. I was going to bring in Sonia as well because I'm thinking back to my time when I was working with doing workforce development, and we specifically targeted individuals who had been incarcerated, had records, and so on. And one of the things that I learned in that time period was that people think that just being arrested and having that on your record is all that people are dealing with. And there's so many other things. I mean, I had people who couldn't get their driver's license back because they had a fine that they couldn't pay, who couldn't, they never, had any skills because they went in as a teenager. So now they, how do they gain skills that can be employable? How do you interview? How do you write a resume? All these other things that I think about that go, into restoring and repairing someone who has gone through that incarceration system. And I think that's why, one of the beautiful things about Project Clean Slate is that we are not just looking at how do we, get this off of your record, but we're looking at how do we actually wipe the slate clean for you, right? That's why we call it Project Clean Slate. You know, how do we get you reintegrated back into society? And so, Ms. Sonia, can you talk a little bit about, you know, when someone is coming out of the prison system, what are some of the challenges initially that they're facing that they must overcome in order to be able to reintegrate back into society?
I think she's she blanked out for a second, so we'll come back to her. Sonia, as soon as she come back, we'll get you back on. Her connection is unstable right now. But
no worries. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, well, Jade and Tamika, if you guys can both talk about that as well, because again, you guys are seeing them as they come to you for expungement, and sometimes that may be years after the fact, right? You know, and they may have found a way to reintegrate, but when you know, can you talk to those people who are kind of fresh out some of those initial hurdles?
Yeah, so every time I host expungement fairs, I always ask for partners to come. Re-entry roundtables, NAACPs, institutions, so maybe you can get trades and certification, because it is so important. Number one, like I said, when you're getting your expungement, essentially you're walking away with a clean record, right? So now when someone puts your name in, nothing's going to pop up. It's not going to pop up on an inner database, an outer database for loans, for anything. But you are able to get housing now. You are able to get an education now. You are able to live, you know, in different areas now. So it is so important to have those resources to help you get back on your feet. However, it also is important to have the support of the community there, so you can go do that same work, that advocacy, to have, like I said, nonprofit organizations there, like this organization, M4MM. It's important to have us there because you may want to get into this industry. So now that you have your clean record, you may have had that record for 10 or 15 years, right? So now you have to make up for 10 or 15 years of your life. And this is a good one-stop shop for you to at least get on your feet and get started around like-minded individual and people who are helping you free of charge, because all of this, again, is going to be free of charge, complimentary. So it's a one-stop shop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sonia, you there? 1 second to me. Are you there, Sonia? Oh no. Okay, go on, Tamika, because we're just trying to get Sonia connection right.
I am
girl.
here. You better get me.
All right. Go ahead, Miss Sonia. Go ahead.
Sonia, pose that question back to Sonia again, just real quick.
I just talking about, you know, so some of those initial challenges.
The connection is
go ahead.
horrible, but I'm excited. I'm excited because I get to provide some resources for people that come. Not only do they need jobs, not only do they need, you know, information on how to get, you know, registered to vote, but they may need some mental support as well. I think we negate or we don't look at all of the emotional stuff that goes on when we have these charges, or when we've been in jail, or when we so much more that go on than. So I want to provide them with resources that can help not only with them finding jobs, but also with them helping them deal with the emotional aspect of it as well. And can you imagine the impact that it's had on their families, on their children, on their sons and their daughters who they may not have seen for a while. So now that they're back at home, how is it going to be? So I want to provide resources, services, information that can help them move to their next space that they're to be in.
Yep. You guys, so that's Sonia Crew. So those who don't know, that's Sonia Crew. She's our community outreach manager. She's an LCSW, and we charging her with the wraparound service of staying connected with folks for at least 6 months after they go through our expungement clinic. So thank you, Sonia, for just that commitment and how important that is. So I know, Tamika, you're going to weigh in on a couple things as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, the cannabis, the regulatory structure of cannabis has demonized felons in the fact that they have provided laws or pushed through laws that keeps people with convictions from entering the space. And every state is different, so it depends on your jurisdiction. But we know that there would be no market if there was not an unregulated market. There would be no clientele. if there wasn't an unregulated market. So keeping people completely out of the market is very disingenuous. So when you look at a company,
and I will.
It's very. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sonia. I can't. I don't. I think I lost you. So, with that in mind, it's going to be on the responsibility of the MSOs and of the companies in the industry to change their policies and procedures, to change their hiring practices, to change their training practices. If they don't, and they just leave it up to the regulators and the legislators to change it, it's going to continue to perpetuate the harm already done from the war on drugs. So, for instance, like Cookies has a proprietary training program in which our company does not require employees to have a college degree in order to get trained. Cookies will train you. We train you on the industry. We train you on the job that you're actually going to need. And then there's also an equity side of our employment program where we will hire people that live below the income line, as well as people that have convictions on their records. So it has to be up to the corporations to change their hiring practices in order to provide education and jobs to the people that were hit hardest, that want to be in the industry, but through regulations, they can't get the access.
Yeah, you say something there that I think is so important. Like, not everybody is going to want to come into this industry, nor are we encouraging everybody who has gone through some type of situation where they need expungement to come into the industry. But it is such a slap in the face for this industry in particular to say that it will not hire people with criminal records. Like, this is the one industry out of all of the industries in which that actually should be deemed unacceptable from our industry. Like, we as consumers shouldn't allow that, as advocates and as communities. We shouldn't allow those same barriers that exist in other industries. And in some cases, sometimes there's a need for it. Like, I think back to when I was doing the workforce development. We couldn't send certain people to the airport for construction because of their security, risk, right? So again, there are scenarios in which that may be applicable. But as a whole, as an industry, there should be no reason why someone who hasn't gotten it expunged off of their record still shouldn't be able to get into this industry. We see the same thing on the hemp side at the federal level, where it's codified in legislation that people with records can't participate. So, can you guys talk about, and Danielle, maybe you could talk about this. I know right now you've been in the role of kind of organizing our events and so on. But, talk about some of the advocacy side of, the social justice reform that needs to happen in this industry.
Yeah, so I think that you made a really salient point in talking about individuals being locked out of the industry, right? But because the truth of the matter is, when we look at it from an advocacy standpoint, the industry would not exist without the work of others. Whether you agree with it being legal, whether you agree with it being illegal, whatever your stance is, we have to look back at that and acknowledge that. Just like, I think it was Tamika who said, somebody said it, pardon me, but like, it was like the idea that if we didn't have the illegal market, then there wouldn't be an industry for it. And so with that, as advocates, we have to make sure that not only are we a part of the process, a part of it, but that we are taking what we already know, right? We have proven the business methods, honestly, on the illegal side and in the legacy market. We have things that we know work. We know how to help individuals, right? We've been doing it for years within our own communities, using the plant as treatment. And so as advocates, we have to come in and be willing to push, to fight, to say, no, this was built on my back, or this was built on the back of someone connected to me. And it's only fair that we have an opportunity to participate in this and to build it in a way that makes sense. Because what we have, when you're looking at it, is we have these dispensaries popping up. And we're seeing struggles for the licenses to be obtained from people of color. And so then there's that barrier to entry, right? They're making it a financial barrier to entry. Then we have the part that says, well, if you have a record, then you can't be a part of this. Just because I have a record and I made a decision that at the time was illegal based on where I was, doesn't mean that my knowledge isn't applicable, doesn't mean that my business acumen doesn't, qualify and count. And we have to, as advocates, be able to say those things, right? Criminal records are a really fine line, a really thin line, right? You do a generic background check. For some people, it just shows that there's a record there. And I'm not going to lie, I feel real different about you if you have, a murder one charge versus a cannabis charge, right? A marijuana charge to me is real different, right? And so if you are pushing me out of the industry or not allowing me to have an opportunity, then my advocacy needs to be to say, no, you need to look deeper than just that blurb. You need to read the notes that follow behind it. And I think that we have that opportunity as advocates as well to, even if we don't have a record, if we don't know someone specifically, we have to not tiptoe around being able to stand up and vocalize for these other individuals. We have to be in our organizations and say to HR, to the hiring managers, hey, this individual shows a record on your little generic background check, right? Like it just shows that they have a record, but are you willing to dig deeper and find out what was it? What were the pieces that surrounded? I love when Attorney Mathis shares the idea of crimes of necessity, because we don't necessarily think about that. If I live in a privileged community, then my perspective is privileged. However, if I take the opportunity to have a conversation with someone else, then I have the ability to understand their perspective and then advocate for them at a bigger and broader level.
Yeah, sometimes in the unregulated market, a lot of those areas, there's lack of jobs, and people don't acknowledge the reason why individuals get into the unregulated market. Yeah, there's some people that are not going to transition over to the regulated market, but there's also some people in the unregulated market that want the training, that want the help with the business guidance, that want to be able to grow properly and be, in the regulated market the right way. They just need the guidance. And if they've had a conviction prior to, that should not be something that keeps them out of the market, because realistically, as an attorney, and Attorney Mathis, I know you've known this, it is only money that keeps people sometimes from getting a charge removed, because the money is what allows them to be able to hire counsel. And it's really a thing about economics. And if a lot more of minorities had that access to counsel, there wouldn't be so many minorities in jail.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's why exactly you're right. And like I told, Roz initially when I met her, it's a never-ending cycle. So you may have a possession of marijuana charge or just a small distribution charge, but then you're placed on probation after you serve your sentence for it, right? So then your probation is 3 to 5 years. You can't drink or, smoke cannabis while you're on probation. You have to pay these fees. You have to pay supervision fees. You have to pay all these other fees. So then you keep getting violated because you can't get a job and you can't pay the fees and you're still smoking cannabis, or even sometimes you might have a medicinal license for it, right? But then you're on probation, so you can't smoke it. So then you're back in front of the judge, and then you have to get a lawyer and come back in front of the judge each time. So even when it's time at the end of your probation, and you want to ask for an expungement, and then we look and see that you violated your probation all these times, the state's attorney may say, guess what? No, you may be eligible, but you weren't good while you're on probation. But then you can't tell her, I couldn't get a job, I had a medicinal license, and so it's just a never-ending cycle. So that's why, like you said, the majority of it is going to be expenses. When you're in the criminal justice system, it's just a cycle that unfortunately sometimes it's just it never ends.
And then what happens? And then what happens if you get a violation a violation for probation when you had a valid medical card?
And there's a point on your, and then again, when you get a violation of probation, there's a point that counts against you on your record. So whenever you get in trouble again for whatever it is, you have this point. So now your guidelines are going to be higher, and it could just be because you couldn't pay the the probation fees or supervision fees, which can be $100 a month.
And everything you guys are saying, I think, is exactly what has led to the mistrust and distrust in our communities of this entire criminal justice system. All right, it seems like we might have Miss Sonia back in here as well. And I'm just curious as well, because I think a large part of it, when I think about this industry, you got people, and Tamika mentioned it a little bit, people who are in the legacy market who don't necessarily want to come into the legal market. And I think that comes from a place of mistrust and distrust that has led to fear. And then you have politicians who regulate this thing as if it is, something that's going to kill people because of their fear. And it's like we're operating from such a position of fear over something that was put on the planet by God, over a plant. And we got to do a lot more, and this is what we do as an organization to educate people and communities on this. But Roz, I'm just curious, what your take is on that in terms of this idea that we're just operating from these places and spaces of fear.
Yeah, well, let's go back to your point when you said we don't have to. Individuals should have an opportunity to pursue a job or ownership in the industry. If there are things put in place where that doesn't happen, it happens due to policy. So for the state of Florida says if you cannot pass a level 2 federal background check, you cannot work, you cannot contract, you cannot own anything in this space. So that law is not only in Florida, but in several different states. So I would put it out to the group here. What are some of the challenges, Danielle, Jade, Tamika, for people that come out of the cover and say, hey, I got this on my record, but what are some of the challenges when you see people that don't qualify? We've been doing expungement clinics now. We've been in this process. What are some of the things that you guys have been hearing from people that have come forward and said, hey, clear my record?
Yeah, so I would love to tackle this one because this is one of the pieces that, if anything were to keep me up at night, is one of these, is once these individuals are seeing that this is a $40 billion industry, right? That the money is there, that it's happening, and they come to get their records expunged and they're ineligible for services for whatever reason, it puts us in the place of having to acknowledge again that the system is flawed, that it is not built for certain people, and that there are individuals and groups of people that will go to by any means necessary to keep them out. And it's disheartening. I had a gentleman down when we were in Florida. He literally walked away and just said, I'm just a lost cause, huh? And there was a look in his eyes for me that was like, what other option does he have at this point? I mean, he can't get into the legal cannabis industry, which he knows upside down, but he also can't get a regular job because he has this background record from the cannabis industry. So I think that Jade made a great point when she talks about how it is just a cycle. But for him, for someone like him, what do we do? I mean, because if it's a felony, right? You don't have a right to vote in certain places. You don't have a firearm. You're not getting a home. So what do we tell those people? And so I think that is the challenge that we face as a Project Clean Slate challenge. Like specifically, what do we do? What jobs and opportunities can we create? I will say that the war on drugs has created a number of entrepreneurs not because of wanting to, but because of have to, right? I cannot get another job. When we're in Arizona, there's a gentleman who came out and didn't qualify for services, but he had been doing odds and end jobs, but he's also a father, right? And so how do we reconcile that when we look at these individuals that have records that are parents? And, I'm a dad, I'm a mom, I have this record and I want to go volunteer at my kid's school. And I come to your clinic and I can't even get this little cannabis charge out. So I can't come and read to the kids on Reading Friday. And I think that's the part that we have to look at when we look at the challenge. Yes, there is an element of not being able to help the individual on that day, but what does our not helping that individual do to their family as a result?
Yeah.
And can I add to that? To me, this is just one of many of the things that's in America for our Black and brown people that continues to hold us or try to hold us down. That's why it's so important for this to take place in as many cities as possible. Because first of all, as sometimes when I tell my students, you're starting already, you already got two strikes against you. You Black and you a male. So you need to do the best that you can while you're in school so that things can be different for you. So when we are doing this work, it's not just about um, clearing your record. It's so much more than that because again, the system does not want us to succeed at all. And they'll go to any cost to make sure that we don't. You can see with the laws. They, how many drug kingpins do you know that are African American? But that's not where they look. They're looking on the street. They want the people on the corner. And who's on the corner? Us.
That's right.
So
Yep.
you already know that the laws were set up.
Yeah.
This is another thing to try to hold us back. But you know what? We can still rise. We will rise.
And you know what? In organizations like M4MM, we're going to be there to do this work, you know, by hook or crook, right? We've been doing this work. And Roz, she could tell you, we've been doing this work on a shoestring budget, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul to get it done because we know how important it is. And so my question is for Tamika. And again, I know, again, from your background and the companies we've had together, you know, how important was it for you when you went on board with Cookies to see a company that felt like it was their responsibility to be a part of this discussion and a part of this work in the community? Because the advocacy groups, we're going to be here to do it, but we can't do it alone. And our impact can only go so far without the support of these companies like Cookies and others who are making millions now on this. And so, you know, what do you see as the role of Cookies and other MSOs, other large cannabis companies in doing the work that we're doing?
So I come from a corporate background before I got into the legal field. I come from a securities and finance background. So from a corporate structure, goodwill it's always on the table and it's always a priority. So volunteering in the community, allowing your employees to have volunteer time off, providing for training courses, allowing them to go to conferences, tuition reimbursement, and things of that nature are all good things for the company, but also pushing employees out into the community and being involved in the community is always very key to get the community buy-in to your company and also let the community know I'm vested in the growth of the community and its people in the community. If you're just a company that goes into a community and just sets up your shop there and you bring everyone in, you're not vested in that community. You're not providing jobs in that community. You're not supporting that community. If you're not hiring vendors from the community, it's a full circle of give and take. And to know of that culture before I even got into cannabis and to be very familiar with that culture, to see it through a cannabis company, because all of the things I mentioned are things that Cookies currently does, plus more. So to have seen that in my previous career and now to see it in a cannabis company, it speaks volumes to me because they're committed to hiring 90% of individuals from the local community in every city that they go to, and they're committed to also paying a higher living wage, and they're more importantly committed to giving back in terms of, we know that everybody is not on the equal playing field in order to get into the cannabis industry. So what do we need to do? They need training, they need education, and they need the barriers of entry to get into our company to be lowered. So what are we going to do? We're going to provide our own training to teach them how to actually be educated on the plant. We're going to teach them how to actually work into a retail dispensary by providing on-site training in an actual dispensary. And then after that, We're going to go and say, you know what, we need employees that actually have convictions. We need employees that actually have suffered from the war on drugs, because if you're MSO and none of your employees have suffered from the war on drugs, it means that they've been arrested or they have some type of a record, or they've had a record expunged, or they've been affected in their community. You're not really serious about equity and helping the community and helping people that have been affected on the war on drugs, because it's a trickle-down effect, just like Attorney Mathis has said. If a parent is arrested, it's going to affect the other parent, it's going to affect the children, it's going to affect the community, it's going to affect that whole entire household, and then the growth of that child. It's not just the person that's serving the time and their time. That's like 2 more generations that are automatically affected. So the amount of money that's being made in this industry, there's a lot of room to be creative and to help on the equity standpoint. And I'm just really excited.
And we should be holding our cannabis operators accountable to, don't just talk about it, let's be about it. And let's put your money where your mouth is. We don't tell you how to make edibles, so don't, because I'm seeing a proliferation of some of the companies like, oh, we'll go and do, or trying to tell the nonprofits what to do when we already in our minds have a program that's set up and we know how to facilitate it. I would love to put this question out to everyone. What's your thoughts on how do we get mainstream Black organizations, community-based organizations to partner with us, to help us be able to identify individuals that could need, their records cleared. We're starting to see folks not, when you have a service, we're thinking you're going to have just hundreds of people come out, and that's not necessarily true, because I think there's a sense of still mistrust, and I would love to put that out to you guys to share your thoughts on.
Sure, I'm going to dive in on this one really quickly. I just want to say that I think that we have to have uncomfortable accountability, which means that we have to be willing to have the difficult conversations, both within our families, within our organizations, the MSOs that we're working with. We have to be willing to have the hard conversation. We have to be willing to go into the churches and say, listen, your soul is great. We're glad that you're working on that, but how's your day-to-day living? Is your day-to-day living being impacted by the war on drugs? Is your day-to-day living stressed or stretched because someone in your family is being impacted by it? And I think as we look at bringing in more community partners, bringing in more organizations, particularly of color, we have to be willing to be honest and not say, well, that's just the way it was, or so-and-so got caught up. No, it was a way of life and a means and mode of survival for whatever reason. And whether it's that grandma who is, at church praying for her grandson or her granddaughter that's out on the streets, or who at that time was, grandma has to also be willing to say, you know what, come on, baby, I heard about this program that's going to help you get that cleared up, but then also point them in the direction. I think that we have to be also intergenerational about it. This cannot be a millennial push. This can't be a boomer push. This is going to take all of the generations working together. What I have seen on the road is that there are individuals with charges from the 70s still trying to get them expunged. It's 2021, right? And so me as a millennial on social media spreading the word versus getting it to my grandma who got caught up because she was trying to take care of my Uncle Joe or whatever. Again, we have to go back to that uncomfortable accountability and be willing to call each other out on it and say, you know what? I see that you are doing great work for the community. I see that you are heavily involved in your church. You're heavily involved at work, etc. But I also don't see you heavily involved in advocacy for individuals that are connected to you that have been directly affected.
So one of the main things I will add to that, it's just so important that we have the uncomfortable conversation, but we also need to educate. There are so many people that it's just when you say marijuana, you say cannabis, their minds automatically go to something negative, and they automatically think, they should have been selling, they should be arrested. No, we don't know the history. We don't know what was going on in their minds. We don't know what was happening at that time. Maybe that was the only way that they could make ends meet. So we need to have the education about helping our people get free. Somebody said, if everybody ain't free, nobody is free.
Yes.
So we need to help our people get free. And one way that we can do this is through education and through expungement.
Miss Sonia, you touched on something, and I think, and Jade, I'm coming to you right now, so I stay ready. One of the things I think that we talked a lot, even about on this show today, and through our advocacy, we talk a lot about the harms done from the war on drugs, right? But I think part of that education that Miss Sonia is talking about is we need to do a better job of telling the stories of how people have benefited from expungement and what that has done to their lives on the flip side. And so, Jade, as you get ready to make your comment, I saw you getting ready to come in. Can you also speak to some of the success stories you've seen and how getting your record clean, has changed and turned people's lives around? Because part of the reason why somebody from the 70s still ain't got it on there is that mistrust and distrust that we talked about earlier.
Yep. One of the things I think we need to do is that we have to be realistic, right? We need to start being specific and strategic with how we identify communities and individuals that we are looking to target. You have certain areas that were hit harder than others on the war on drugs, right? Or certain populations and demographics. We need to start looking at those places. And also, as Danielle said, accountability is a big thing. You have these nonprofit organizations, you have these for-profit organizations, you have these churches, police department, government entities. We do need to be bold in their face about having expungement fairs at their locations. And honestly, a lot of it, we haven't received a lot of. When I do expungement fairs, I don't receive a lot of pushback from those individuals. It just takes someone to actually go and speak with them about it. A lot of them are open to it. You just have to sell it the right way. Just like you sell any other package or any other opportunity, you have to sell this the right way with passion, the same way. And lastly, we need people willing to do the boots on the ground work, right? Because everybody I've helped at an expungement fair, as you said, I've been doing expungement fairs for 6 years. I have had probably at least 8 people reach out to me that are now entrepreneurs that own their own companies, sent me emails and said, thank you so much. Now that these are off of my record from 83 and 87, these charges from 1983 and 87, I have a crab cake business in Maryland, one of the top selling ones. Hey, I was able to go back to law school because now I can get this loan. I can get this grant for this. I was able to buy this house. I was able to get a grant for my students, for my child to go to school. So I have had so many success stories of people that mainly had cases that were in the, like you said, the 80s and the 90s and didn't know where to start, didn't know how to start. So having people like M4MM who are very passionate individuals who are willing to do the boots on the grounds and meet people where they are with no judgment, with no questions, with no ridicule. That's one thing I make sure I do as the prosecutor when I'm doing these fairs. I don't care about we're going to get this off so you can move forward in life. So you're going to have to get people who are passionate inside about it to sit down and meet with these local organizations and these leaders in these different cities and areas.
Jade said something super important. That judgment is so crucial in our industry. It is crazy. We are charged essentially with changing the tone at the top. The top of the house, the top of the household, the top of the church, the top of the corporate organization, just changing the tone at the top and then having that trickle down in order to change the stereotype and the judgment that has been put on the cannabis industry and or cannabis users, because there's sometimes where there are people that don't even consume, they think that because they don't consume, they're not affected by the war on drugs. And I'm just, it's not only the people that consume that are affected. And we have to open up our eyes and it's the moving the judgment that will allow that to happen.
No, you're absolutely right. You guys, when we think about the promise of, legalization at the federal level and what that would mean for talking about from a trickle down perspective, what are some of the things that you're hoping for from a policy standpoint that will help us? And will it make a difference? Because we have states like New Jersey where there's automatic expungement, but however, the systems where the records are located for different municipalities and cities and states, they're not talking to one another. So how will those challenges affect, as we're trying to make this a normal practice of expunging people's records?
I think I would love to tackle this one. So I think that it comes back to that piece of education, right? We're here in Los Angeles right now. We know that over 66,000 people had their records cleared recently in the last year or two for marijuana charges, right? How many people know that that happened for them? How many people are aware that they were one of those 66,000? They're not. And so we have to be able to go into the communities, help them understand like it's okay to check, and we're not going to judge you for checking. It doesn't take us anything to go into the system and look and see what's still there. And then as far as looking at national legalization and expungement, right? I think that's a tech and money problem. Tech and money problem. Like if you own a tech company, you need to be putting your dollars where your mouth is and saying, let me create something. Let me create the connection point between all of these various counties who've all been operating under their own whatevers and figuring it out and make them talk, make these systems talk. We know that certain states have backlogs of 6 to 9 months once an individual applies for their automatic expungement. Why is that backlog there? Because just like Roz said, there is not a system that talks from where they got their charges in 19, whenever, 2000, whatever, that talks to the automatic expungement that's taken care in 2020. And I think that we need the tech dollars to build out the infrastructure, the technological infrastructure. I threw that word in there for Melissa. Hope she's listening. The technological infrastructure to be able to support these broad expungements. There is one lady, I believe she's here in either California or Arizona, that has created some technology, but where are my tech founders and billionaires to come, my venture capitalists, right, to come and fund that so that it can be made available statewide and then nationwide? So that's my challenge to those of you that are trying to figure out, hey, how can I get on this? We've talked about advocacy today. We've talked about education today. And when Jay mentioned the idea of having boots on the ground, part of the boots on the ground is using your relationships with those that have the resources to impact change and saying, hey, I need 150 grand to put towards this. I need $25,000 to put towards this particular system. I need 1.5 million for the build out of this, right? Because we know that there are entrepreneurs and that there's tech out there that can move the needle, not a little bit, a whole lot in terms of this. And I'm off my soapbox. Goodbye and good night.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? And I think, and Jay, can you answer this as well? What role does the government, the state governments, the federal government, as we talk about federal legalization, who caused this problem to begin with, right? I mean, you know, we talked about how we got to hold our operators accountable. They're the ones making millions now. But, you know, what role, like this infrastructure that Danielle is talking about, when I hear that, I'm like, that the government needs to foot the bill for that. They're the ones that caused this problem. So how do we get our states to put the necessary resources? It's good, like Ross said, for New Jersey and California to do automatic expungement, but then you don't do anything to help make sure that people get that. You don't put the funding in to make sure everybody gets a letter in the mail knowing that this has happened. You know, so talk about that role that the state and the federal government needs to play.
So I know it may sound cliche. However, people have to always remember your state and your federal government officials are always going to look like the people that you put in office, and their decisions are always going to reflect the person you put in office. So for instance, I do expungements, right? I have had drug charges that I'll look at, and there's two and they look almost identical. However, one statute is expungible and one is not. It means it's just going to stay on your record forever. And the person will come to court and just say, I don't understand. I don't get it. You know, this was 30 years ago. I reformed my life. The judge and I are looking at each other and we're like, I really wish that I can give this to you. You are right. This looks just like the other statute. You've done well in 30 years. This should not hold you back. However, it is the legislature. That's who makes the expungement laws. I tell people that all the time. Even if I want to, as a prosecutor, sign off and say you have done everything in society to restore yourself and your community that you can do. However, this statute says this. These are the people who are put into office. So that's one thing. Like these, you know, groups and people who are passionate about changing these laws or expungement laws, you should meet with your local officials. You should meet with them and, and ask them for, like I said, expungement fairs. A lot of we're partnering with our government agencies. We're trying to change the way that they are looking at these marijuana charges. That's what we're doing for MM. We partner with local government agencies, state's attorney's office, public defender's office to change the way they are looking at these charges. So I just task other people in the community, take it to a higher level, go to your local officials, elected officials, and propose things. But all of the laws always come from the top. The legislatures are the ones who make them all.
I gotta jump in on this one because literally I gotta jump in because it's so critical. Jade is spitting true knowledge. Listen, I'm about to drop. You got a collection plate, Jade? Because I'm about to put some money in your collection plate. That's what I'm talking about.
My cash is
also with our hands.
Yes. I'm about to put a little, because you guys, the thing about it is, and if y'all not sharing this right now, because folks are talking about, we have an expungement clinic, we doing this. No, we support all of this going on, but at the end of the day, we can do more and not even have a lot of resources if we have policymakers. She's talking about state legislators who are putting in good policy that allows us the flexibility to be able to support individuals that have charges. The more flexible, I will tell you this, California has some flexible cannabis expungement laws that's going to give us the flexibility to have people that have drug charges to get them to plead down and turn into a misdemeanor and possibly be able to get expunged. And I just say all this to say that shout out to Senator Bracy, who introduced an expungement.
He's freezing on the good part. We got this heavy mic. Okay, the mic is hot today. Sonia, I know that you had something to say. So
what she was saying was, shout out to people like Senator Bracy here in the state of Florida who put forth an expungement bill to do this here in the state, but also recognize that you need to place the resources behind it to do that. Shout out to people like Councilman Doug Lawson and Mayor Felder down in Riviera Beach, who saw that this was something that was needed for their community. They saw this from the standpoint of, we got people in our community who can't get jobs. We live in a community that has a high rate of joblessness. One of the things that we as a city needs to be a part of is doing things to help people get into those jobs, right? And so if that means sponsoring an expungement clinic, that's what we need to do as a city. So, I think it's important that, Jade said it, we got to get very, very political on the local level, at the state level. We have to begin to make it a routine habit of emailing and calling and going to city council meetings and supporting groups like InfraMM, through donations and membership and so on, so that we can put people, like you said before, boots on the ground to be able to do all of this. But, guys, we got election seasons coming up real soon for a lot of places around the country. We need not only do we need candidates who understand the plight of what our communities are going through, but we also need our communities to show up and to show out for these elected officials, but that's the only way that we're going to be able to do this. So, Roz, we see that you're back here. You was blessing us with some knowledge, and then you cut out on us, but I was just supporting what Jay.
No, I was supporting what Jay said. As we get closer to the time for us to start wrapping up, what I'm excited about is the opportunity and the possibilities of not only from a policy perspective, but also from it's not just InfraMM that's doing expungement clinics. There's a lot of folks doing some great work out there. And so, Tamika, going back again, we're so grateful to be partnered with Cookies. Cookies is sponsoring this expungement clinic coming up. I want, Tamika, just to talk about your commitment to this, and Danielle, break down the information for folks. If you're in Los Angeles, what to do, what's going on. So Tamika, you first, and Danielle, so that as we start to wrap up, just making sure that people know that we want them to participate and want to get the word out.
Yes, again, everybody, my name is Tamika Range. I am the Director of Community Relations here at Cookies. And although I am new in this position, this company is not new to supporting social equity events or causes. This is something that has been at the heart of Cookies, to give back to the community, to support the community, to support nonprofit groups in the community, and to support local agencies, just to really be ingrained and across any community that you see a Cookies store in, or any of our sister stores. So I am very excited to be a part of working with Minorities for Medical Marijuana for this particular expungement clinic. And we look forward to doing more expungement clinics, job fairs. We just look forward to being really active in the community and continuing to bring the community into the industry.
Excellent. I will dive in. Thank you so much, Tamika, for sharing that with us and being here with us today, and a partner for this. Again, I'm Danielle Butler. I'm the program director for Project Clean Slate. And this weekend, we are on site in Los Angeles, sponsored by Cookies, hosting an expungement fair at 1706 West Florence Avenue. We will be there from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. PST, and registration and additional information is available at www.projectcleanslate.org. We are encouraging as many people to pre-register in advance, but we will be taking walk-up appointments. We have that legal assistance. We talked about the expense of the expungement process. So we will have resources available both from the legal side as well as the community partner side to support individuals qualifying for services. So we hope to see you soon, tomorrow.
Absolutely. Please, everybody, even if you're not in the LA area, definitely reach out to your folks who are in the surrounding areas as well. Like, if you live somewhere that's drivable and it's close by, definitely go ahead and make it a point to come out tomorrow. Go ahead and do your pre-registration tonight. That way, we can do what we need to do on our end to be ready for you tomorrow. But tag somebody in, like Miss Sonia say, or I'm sorry, like Danielle said, grandma needs to be pulling, that grandson out there to the expungement clinic. You got that family member who has that charge. Everybody know it. It's not like it's a secret. The family know. Y'all need to all be getting on the horn and calling up little JoJo and telling JoJo, listen, we got a date tomorrow. I'm gonna take you out to lunch, and then I'm gonna take you to go get your record clean. And that's how we're supposed to do it as a family, and make this a family event. And then when it's done, you get to celebrate as a family as well. So this is so important for you guys. Definitely tap into everybody else. Miss Sonia, thank you for coming on today. Jade, or Sonia and Jade, I don't know if you guys have any last words you want to share as well before we hop off.
I look forward to you all seeing you tomorrow if you come out, and if not, hearing about you doing local advocacy in your respective locations, and reaching out to your elected officials and being active in that aspect, and not sitting behind the keyboard being active, but actually being, as I said, boots on the ground. So.
Absolutely. So I'm excited about tomorrow, and going forward, not just tomorrow, but making major change with our elected officials, as Jade said earlier, becoming registered voters, making those quality decisions, not just when there's a president to be elected, but when your judge is being elected locally, when your mayor is being elected locally. Do they look like us? Are they going to help us? So you need to be mindful and be engaged, as Jade said, be engaged in your community. That's the only way that we're going to get some change. So I'm excited about being here today and tomorrow. So I look forward to seeing everyone.
Absolutely. And I know we're getting some questions about when the next expungement clinic is going to be in this area and that area. And we got a lot planned. We've been working Miss Danielle Butler to the bone since she came on, and so we got more planned for her. We're gonna keep her and Jade and Miss Sonia and the whole team busy. And M for MM, this is what our organization was built to do. So we'll be doing this for the foreseeable future. more this year, more in coming years, because we got a lot of people out there that need this service, right? And so the way that you can help us is become a member. Go onto our website, donate, and by most importantly, call somebody who you know needs this service. Again, we have great people like Cookies and other folks who help sponsor these around the country, so that you guys don't have to put in your you don't have to come and scrape together all of the money that you need to do this. We handle that, and we try to take the guesswork out of it for you guys. And so, I think Roz has had I think her signal may have gone bad on us a little bit as well, but it's all good. We got this, event tomorrow. I put the website in the chat, so projectcleanslate.org if you need to register. Danielle, can you give us that address one more time? Please go ahead and show up, even if you don't get to register.
Yes, absolutely. It is 1706 West Florence Avenue. Again, 1706 West Florence Avenue. Let's see if I can get a zip code. I don't have it. Talk about a comedy of errors. And that's 90047. So 1706 West Florence Avenue, Los Angeles, California, 30047.
All right. And so we'll see y'all tomorrow. Let people know. As always, this has been another awesome Friday on Canna Talk with Roz. Y'all know my message to y'all, as always, is to go home, love on yourself this weekend, love on your family by getting them out there to this expungement clinic, and get some rest this weekend, because come Monday morning, we got work to do. And we will see y'all back here again next week on another episode of Canna Talk with Roz. We love y'all. Thank y'all so much for joining in and joining us today and being with us. And please, this video is on recording. It's on our Facebook. So go and, hit share and let somebody else see it, and make sure everybody is there. Okay. We'll see y'all tomorrow, and we'll see y'all next week. Love y'all, and goodbye.